Welcome to the Shannon Wheeler podcast. After spending 30 years in the housing industry, I have come to understand that there are two things that I love to talk about. One of those is real estate, and the other one is people. And so this is a show that is going to focus on those two things. Real estate and all the things that go on in the real estate markets, because it's of a lot of interest to me, and people, because I've learned, if nothing else, over 30 years' time, that every business is truly a people business. Thank you for spending some time with us.
So let's get into all things Kat. So you have a big opportunity coming up to speak at TEDx Murfreesboro.
So excited.
Yeah. So what makes speaking at TEDx something that sounds interesting to you?
Ooh, okay. Well, two things. One, obviously TEDx is a large stage. And for me in the conversation that I have, the larger of a stage, the more impact that I can make, because the more people are going to hear it, right? Versus just, a small little independent stage. And so TEDx does have the opportunity and the ability to be able to push what it is that I'm putting out there way beyond my reach. But also I love it because it's right here in the community that I grew up with, right? So that makes it super unique, because it's not like I'm traveling to go to somebody else's area. I get to speak in a space that I've grown up in. My story is from this space as well. So it's kind of like this full circle moment, of being raised here and going through things and coming out of it. And now I get to share it with the community. So I think that's the two big things for me.
So, TEDx is a stage that really asks the speaker to have an idea worth spreading, or an idea worth sharing. So, I'm sure you'll attest to the fact that I've pushed everybody. But talk about that. When you really think about TEDx and you think about a message that you got, and you think about the stage, it really does immediately have you start digging a little deeper, I'm sure. So talk about that process, just going from, hey, this is something I want to do, and even being experienced with your content, it still is a process, right?
Oh, 100%. Well, and it's different when, you've got your process, or you've got content, or even some of the speeches that I do for law enforcement. That's a 45-minute window, right? That's the interesting thing about TEDx, is it really does push you to get to the point, but also make sure that emotionally it's dragging people in, that it's making people think. So you really have to be able to give a point, but give a deep point and reach people, but also in a very short amount of time. So for somebody that loves to talk, it is definitely a little bit of a challenge, because I always want to go into detail. I always want to go into depth. And there's also a really unique way to have a conversation at a depth and then be able to bring people back out of it in such a short span.
So when you looked at your talk and you said, this is the idea that I want to share, and you realized that you were going to have to leave some things on the cutting room floor, you only have so much space. How did you set those priorities? Where did you start? Okay, I'm going to put a priority on impact, or I'm going to put a priority on the takeaway, or where did you start to focus your priorities, because you have to get a lot of idea into a small space?
Yeah. And the biggest priority for me is, what story can I share that I know that the majority of people are going to be able to relate to, right? Because that's what you want to do. You want to be able to drag people in. You want them to be like, oh, I've done that before. I've experienced that before, or I can relate to that in some way, because that's how you grab their attention. So that's always the main priority, is what story can we share that's really going to reach the audience that is going to be there. And then from there, it's okay, now how do we take them through the journey? And then what can we give them to impact them, so that we leave them in a space of inspired and wanting to make change. So those are probably the top three that I always try to focus on, but especially in TEDx.
So let's talk for just a minute about when you're giving a TEDx talk. It is something that typically comes with, heavy topics, or topics of import. Now, I've also seen one of my favorite TEDx talks that was about drying your hands with a paper towel. Changed my life. Can't dry my hands the same way. Guy's amazing. But most of the time it has sort of heavier topics, and yours is a heavier topic, but also a very hopeful take on what you can do in the midst of this, but let's talk a little bit, without going too far into it, about what your talk is about and why it matters to you.
Absolutely. So, especially like you said, speaking on deep topics that can make people wiggle in their seat, domestic violence is definitely one of those, right? And I think the bigger thing for me is we don't talk about it enough. And in any circumstance, whether it's domestic violence or anything that we're dealing with, if we're not having the conversations on a regular basis, we can't expect there to be this big change. We can't expect people to understand what it is other people are going through, or think about how we can make change, or do anything that moves toward it.
Do you find it harder to have the conversation when everybody is so digitally siloed? Does it make it harder to have a third space or a common area when people are so in their silos?
Yes and no. And here's the reason why. Like, yes, because there's so much information out there. It's like an overload, right? So having to reel people back in can be a challenge. And we're also at a space where I think people are so invested in the digital space, they're almost overwhelmed in it, and they're looking for, how do I actually connect from somebody that's really, truly experienced something, which is where I feel like I come in, being able to bring that experience and really lay it on the table, but then also walk people through, from beginning to end, so you get a full 360 view. And then it's like, okay, now what can we do from here?
Gotcha. Yeah, it's one of those where when you're in it, you have a perspective that is so radically different than when you're not. And so I think being that bridge is important, because you've both been in, and I guess you're never not in, right? It's just so talk about that a little bit. Just the fact that it's always some sort of spectrum or grade. It's not a black or white. It's not an in or out.
Yeah.
It's an either I'm seeing more clearly now than at this other time, possibly. Or how would you describe that sort of spectrum?
Yeah, I would say that, especially when you are speaking on something that you've personally experienced and you're not just like an expert on it, there's more of a depth that you can go into. And there's a really interesting in-between piece, like you're saying. There's like this gray area, because while you're speaking about it, you're not just sharing somebody else's, you're sharing yours. So it's like retelling this past life, because now you're like, okay, I'm not in it, but I remember, right? Yeah. So you get to this level of like, I feel like sometimes I'm telling a story and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's my story, right? Yeah. Like, so there's this really interesting space that you play in between, but I also think that it grabs people's attention a lot more too, simply because I have the ability to go into that depth because it is a personal experience. So it's not like it's some made up story that you read in a textbook that you're like, I kind of relate to that. Someone can actually ask questions and I can give them answers based on what I've experienced.
When you talk about TEDx and you talk about compacting a message into things that are important, you talk about getting the audience as engaged as possible. I think about that as like portability for your message. Like more people that can pick it up, the better on balance. It's going to be more impactful for some than others, but on balance, a wider reach. And so with your topic, I think it's interesting because that was one of the things that you identified as a key, but I think it's also one of those things that people don't realize how many people and how much people around them are affected.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think a lot of people are going to sit there when you say domestic violence, when you bring that up, I think there's an instant point where people either say, I am a victim and I understand that on this level, or I'm over here where I'm not feeling as if I was directly a victim. However, I'm not really willing to explore all the space in between where I saw it in my house, or that makes you a victim, or I have an aunt or a cousin, or, and so it just seems like people are very quick to go, I'm either here or here. And I think part of your portability challenge or part of that messaging is going to be to say, now, wait a minute, let me just remind you, you're not either here or here.
Yeah.
And so how does that play out in people's lives? What are some of the statistics? What are some of the things that are happening around people that they maybe walk past or around every day?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest statistics that, and I was a part of this as well before I found myself in this situation where I was like, oh, okay, it happens like to like what, one every 1,000 or something like that. Because again, it's just not a common conversation. And when I started doing the statistics and stuff, I found out that it's 1 in every 4 women and 1 in every 6 men. Just in the US, that is nowhere else. That is staggering. I think about, I actually did a talk for a social work class and we had 10 students in there. And during that conversation, 3 of those 10 students were affected in some way. 1 came out of a relationship and 2 had seen it growing up.
So that doesn't stop there.
Absolutely.
Because those 3 people do not have these things happen as individuals. So that's other families say, I mean, like the reach just goes and goes.
It does.
It's not just those 3 people.
It's such a common issue. I think that's what frustrates me the most is that it is so common of a problem, yet nobody wants to talk about it. We just want to sweep it under the rug and pretend like it's not even happening.
Right. Either here or there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I really work to bridge that gap is like, the other thing is domestic abuse, I think, has always been stigmatized as physical only, right? A lot of people that think about domestic abuse are like, oh, bruises, being punched, something like that. There are so many different forms of abuse, from emotional, psychological, financial. These are all things that nobody sees, right? That people can't get away from because we don't know how to explain it to the police because there's no physical evidence to prove our case. And that's the other issue as well, is because we have been taught that, most people that are going through those, myself included, a lot of the psychological and emotional components, I didn't attest to abuse because I'd never seen it in my household growing up and I didn't understand what it was. I just figured, it was my problem. I was screwing up. I wasn't doing things correctly. I should do more. And it wasn't until way after that I really started puzzle piecing the things together and realizing that there are all these different forms that I consider to be invisible components of abuse that nobody talks about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're glad that you're decided to be brave enough and courageous enough to come to the TEDx Murfreesboro stage in 2026. And we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for doing it.
Absolutely.
And we will see you on March the 12th. Okay. So Kat, as you know, I'm a mortgage, real estate finance guy. So I want to ask all of my guests, what kind of house did you grow up in?
Ooh, okay. So we're talking about physically or not?
Yeah, I've had all kinds of answers. Just start wherever you're comfortable.
Yeah. So, what's really funny is I actually grew up right here in Murfreesboro, or technically Las Casas, so still in this county. And I think I was really blessed for the house that I grew up on. I grew up on 64 acres. So we had one of the tallest hills in Rutherford County at that time, and had a bunch of different farm animals. My parents ran an animal sanctuary growing up. And, I was really blessed, especially as a kid, to be able to experience all the things that nature had. People always talk about, oh, my parents used to kick me outside. But that was the best thing about everything, is that's what we did. Whether it was summertime, after school, whatever, we were always outside, whether it was in the trails, riding 4-wheelers, So I feel like I had a really great childhood, but also the opportunity to really experience nature and all of those things. Now, obviously, cell phones wasn't really a thing when I was a kid either, but I know, isn't that crazy? But I really think that it shaped who I am today in regards to, a digital space that we live in. And I really enjoy being able to be outdoors. So I take those opportunities, especially in the area that we live in.
So I had this question the other day for myself. I've been meaning to ask someone. Is home where you grow up, or is the place you grow up home?
Ooh, that's interesting.
And when I was asking myself that question, I realized that I did not know the answer.
Okay.
And so as I thought about it more deeply, I thought, well, I always think of home as, like for a lot of people that may be, the place they spent more time as a child than any other place. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the time in their life they felt at home.
That's true.
And when they felt at home, that's home.
Yeah.
If home is where the heart is, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's a really interesting question. Like it really makes you think. but it's very true, right? I mean, for so many people, home wasn't necessarily the place that they put their head, down to sleep. It was maybe they spent more time at a friend's house, and that kind of felt more like home, or, the things that they did growing up in that area.
I think there's also a thing where you can be in a loving home and you've got your parents and your siblings and, everything can just be going along like normal, but it's still not that moment when you had to stand on your own 2 feet and take account for your actions, because sometimes home can just be a really soft spot where you don't get challenged like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't always mean that that's where, it's all different. Kat, you've been podcasting for quite some time and you have like a pretty extensive reach. Yeah. I had no idea. So talk about the podcast. What's the purpose of the podcast? Who are the people that listen to the podcast? Let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So funny enough, when I started the podcast, it's been 3 years now since we've had it. I didn't realize that this was the direction I was going to take it. I really was kind of using it. At that time, I was in the real estate space and I thought, it'd be kind of cool to have realtors on and kind of talk, stats and blah, 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 blah. But I quickly found out that I really enjoyed going even deeper with people. Like I wanted to learn what were their stories? Where did they come from? Where were they going from now? And that opened up to like this realm of entrepreneurship. And so I quickly moved away from realtors and I wanted to explore that, so that the whole point of it is I wanted to have open-ended conversations that weren't edited, that weren't perfect, that people could listen to and be like, I feel like I'm sitting in the room with them. And I wanted people to understand that there are other people, regardless of where they're at, that have probably been through a pivot you've been through, or a burnout situation you've been through, or trauma that you've been through. And if I could create a space of open conversation and connectiveness, maybe we wouldn't feel so alone, especially in the digital age. So many people, I feel like, sit at home alone and we suffer with the things that we've been through and the stuff that we're going through. We don't talk about it as much, unless we're like trying to label ourselves as it. And I really wanted people to understand that it doesn't matter the background, like things happen all over the globe regardless. And I wanted to be able to create that kind of support and community through those conversations.
Who's a guest that's been on your podcast that stands out that you learned something from?
Ooh.
That you were unexpectedly surprised by.
Oh my gosh, I feel like there's a plethora of them. I was actually telling Trent, I had one lady that was on that was in the pharmacy department, but she was a scientist. And one of the things that she talked about was her burnout in the industry and feeling like there was this kind of pull to like more of the spiritual side. She kept kind of feeling pulled to. And eventually she made the shift after like 15 years and started her own business and really stepped into this realm of opening herself up to being able to help other people and heal them and do coaching with them. And it was just like, it was really interesting because I'm like, you go from a scientific space and it's like, everything's written down. It's very logic. You know exactly what you're getting, to this open-ended space of like, I think we can do this. And I believe that we can do this, and it was a really interesting shift to see. And she loves it. She said she would never go back in the other direction. I've had I had a psychologist that was on that had been in business for 30 plus years and also does like somatic healing and a couple of other things. And that was a really interesting conversation because she has a beautiful way of blending how we are wired and how the neurons in our brain function, which I'm fascinated by the way, but also bringing it into a level to where like we were able to talk on kind of like an 8th grade level where listeners are really going to be able to understand it. And I think that plays a huge role in how we make decisions and why we make the certain decisions that we do, or why we stay in situations that we do. Because there's just these little bitty things that like we just don't talk about. And I'm always fascinated when somebody comes on and has something like that.
So have you ever had the podcast scheduled and you're like, okay, I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. I'm struggling with, I'm distracted about this, that, I'm just not feeling it. And then you get there and you're like, okay, I'm here now, and you get started. This is not happening to me right now.
Oh, okay, good. Just making sure.
Yeah, and then you get into it, and the next thing you know, by the time you're done, you just feel like that's the greatest feeling because I just either got to a new understanding of something that I've been trying to understand more deeply, or I was encouraged because I heard this message from this person. So does that ever happen to you where you're taken away by how you start out maybe not super fired up about it, but then you get something out of it at the end?
Yeah, that's always the ones where it's like
it's like the preacher, right?
Okay,
like
yeah, that's true.
It's like I can't remember who it was. I'm not gonna say anything about my senior pastor, but because I don't think it was him. But he said, the preacher's like, well, every Sunday, how do you put it? Every Sunday I have to have something to say, and some Sundays I just have to say something. I think maybe that's how it goes.
That's fantastic.
So it's if you do a show on the regular for several years, which you have, you're going to have those moments.
Oh, absolutely. And what I always find funny is every time that I have that moment, I swear that the person that I'm interviewing is speaking directly to me. And I'm like, crap. Yeah, I know. I needed to know that. I swear every time, like I know it. But I've also gotten in the habit of, I really try to put myself in a space before I go on with a guest. So like I have certain little things that I do that, especially if I know like it's been a trying day and I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I kind of wish they would cancel, which I've had those days. I always try to make at least a space of 5 minutes before I go on with them. And then what I will do is I either burn a candle or I have a specific type of oil that I really like. I'm really big on smells, and smells really help me kind of come back down to a different state, and I can kind of leave all the other focus off. And so I will do that before I get in it. So it's kind of like a lot of people say setting an intention, but it's really just kind of refocusing, reshifting, and saying, okay, this is a space I want to be in. This is a space I know that we're about to be in. And this is the kind of conversation I want to make sure that people hear. So that's kind of become a thing that I started doing because of that.
That's a TED Talk all on its own. I like the routine nature of that. Like if I'm going to go for a run, maybe I don't feel like going for a run that day, which I could never say that, but let's just suppose it were to happen. Then you get up, you put on your gym clothes, you put on your running shoes, you do your, you do running things, right?
Yeah.
And it's like next thing you know, after a few minutes, you're like, oh, okay, well, now I'm off and running.
Yeah, it's like you put yourself in that state of mind to be able to kind of be rolling, because life's right. It's never not going to life, and I think that's the important piece is how do we pay attention to that?
Yeah, because I never really thought about how I just do it automatically in these other ways. I guess you have your bedtime routine, you actually like all your different things.
Absolutely.
But I haven't really thought about planning a specific intentional routine for these other things that come up. So it's kind of like with Christmas, whenever I'm always stupefied at how surprised I am by Christmas. Like,
oh, where'd that come from?
Christmas? What? You mean every year? The same? In the same
day,
month? Same. Wow. Really? Anyway, so having some, and I thought about this emotionally. It occurred to me a couple of months ago that while I was going through trying to figure out how to understand my emotions, process my emotions, not let my emotions be problematic, but enhance my experience of like, that's
a TEDx talk.
Right. Just kind of going through and doing all that. It was just occurring to me how I've got to always try and figure out whether the energy that I'm spending is getting in the way of just letting it all happen. I don't know, but having some prepared things may help. So I'm dealing with my emotions, trying to figure this stuff out. And it occurred to me, I never have sat down and said, okay, if something's going to happen that's going to make you feel a type of way, an emotional response, you act like you don't know that this is a likelihood. Like you act like you're just walking through life like, oh, what?
Yeah.
On my birthday, it's on the same day, like, or Christmas every year, Mother's Day, the same time they plan this stuff. Like, you're going to have these emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have things that happen that make you feel angry or loving or upset or like any number. And so I just never thought, you should probably just have a plan for that. So that if you are going throughout your day and somebody says something and they're going throughout their day and you now feel some type of way, what's your plan?
Yeah.
Is it just me or is that something that's like people should do?
Oh, absolutely. So
like if you start feeling like, remorseful or like anything, prepare for it. So
yeah, I think that there's a way to have what a lot of people call your emotional toolbox. I love this, right?
Right.
And so,
Trent, do you have an emotional toolbox?
Absolutely.
Oh, right.
I used to say that all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
I love
all
it.
right.
So
under the category of come to the party, Shannon. We've been here for decades, but glad you
know
made
what
it.
though? Hey, I didn't learn about personal development or dealing with emotions until about 6 years ago. So if it makes you feel any better, this is totally new to me. But a lot of people talk about having an emotional toolbox because the one thing that might help in one situation is not necessarily going to help in another, right? Especially if it's like a big emotion or something that is a surprise, right? So having different things that work for you, which means you have to pay attention to what works for you, is really great. Like, so for instance, I know that smells really help bring me back to a specific space, right? There's something about them that I can focus on them. And when I focus on them, it kind of takes everything else away for a moment and I can kind of come back down to center. There's other things like you'll talk to people that do tapping, which is an interesting thing if you've ever heard of that. So, or people that will do breathing techniques, right? So it's just a way to kind of bring the system back down because what happens is everything gets heightened and our bodies are they believe that they are still being chased from a lion, right? From, thousands of years ago. It just is what it is. And so when we get caught up in those emotions, which are going to happen, it's better to let it flow and be okay with it versus like trying to stuff it down. Because when we do that, and I learned this from someone on my podcast, which I found was really interesting, is the emotions don't actually go away. And so what happens is they kind of sit in the body and they're all like crunched up. And then you start notice you have like this shoulder pain. And you're like, oh my God, where did that come from? Or you get headaches all of a sudden, or you get this back pain. You're like, where did that? I must have slept wrong. But a lot of it has to do with because we're not allowing ourselves to release and deal with the emotions and things because as a society, we've kind of been taught to like, that isn't good, or don't do this, or don't cry about that, or don't be angry about that. But that's not how it used to be. Did you know that actually before anesthesia was a thing, that they actually did a scientific study on individuals that were having surgeries and different things? Okay. The set of individuals that as they were going through things and as they came out of it, that screamed and hollered and dealt with the emotions and like let it all flow actually healed better than those that tried to contain it.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm with you. I was thinking about if you trying to have surgery without anesthesia, and I was like, oh man,
well, right? That's a whole thing in its own.
Yeah, but I can see that. I definitely think there is a causation between thoughts and the physical body, and I don't know the limits, like several people, and you're kind of alluding to the idea that I think if you follow that down, you eventually get to this place where it's limitless, right? Mm-hmm. So, the body can heal itself and there's this limitless top side to how that can work. I don't know really where all that, but what I do know is that to me, there are certain functions of the body that happen automatically. The medulla oblongata controls, there's all kinds of things. You can't keep up with all that stuff. Like if we were having this conversation, I was like, I need to regulate my iron. Hold on a minute here. Like this is not, but the idea that you do have control over your body, you can, I can definitely move my right hand or my left hand. It tells me there's got to be some ability for me to, on a different, deeper level, communicate to areas of my body? Like, why could I not, feel as if I was moving blood flow to a knee if your knee is sore and you need to bring, I just don't know the limits.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there's things that have already been proven. I mean, if you think about it, stress, which is huge, right, is a leading cause of death. I mean, it causes cardiac issues. True. It's caused cancer in people. Like, it leads to things. Why? Because you're letting things completely build up. Now, is that the sole case? Absolutely not. But I mean, if you're in high stress all the time, there are things that we know within the body that are happening. So, and this is, I found this really interesting. If you want to take stress to see what it actually does to the body. So I was watching this documentary on healing and the ability of different things that the body's able to do. And what they were talking about is, and it was a surgeon that was actually talking about this. He said, the body, when it's in survival mode or it's overly stressed out, you have cortisol that raises. And so your body actually starts to shut down the use of other pieces within your body. So if you were in straight survival mode, you actually lose the frontal lobe. So you're not logically thinking, you're all emotion.
I totally see that.
Yeah, right. So what they were saying was, when they are doing surgery on a patient and they are adding in an organ, so we're doing an organ transplant, they actually inject something that causes the body to go into an overload of stress response, because when it does, it actually shuts down your organs, and they can put the organ in, and then when the body comes back down, it doesn't recognize it as a foreign object.
I donated a kidney to my brother in 1992. And that's made me think about that. I wonder if they did that. That is pretty wild.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And so the answer to the question also is, if you understand that, and then you have techniques in place to reduce stress, then you really are healing your body by removing the stressor.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, that's a direct way that with your mind and your mental approach, you can de-stress the body and or provide healing, right? Like the absence of one, it presents the other.
Absolutely. And it's just being able to kind of balance, right? Because you're never not going to go through stress, right? You're never not going to have a stressful event or something that comes out of the blue that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. So being able to know, like, okay, I'm way up here, but I know that if I do this, this, and this, I can at least bring myself down a little bit. Maybe I can think a little bit more clearly. Then I can make a decision in what needs to be done. Like, that's where you kind of want to get. It doesn't mean that it's just going to shut everything down.
Preparedness.
Yeah.
Trent's got an emotional toolbox, and I'm envious now. I got to get one of these. I'm working on it. Kat, thanks for coming and talking.
Absolutely.
So Jason, listen. Yeah. I've known you for quite some time. I don't know that I've ever seen you as excited about the work that you get to do on a day-to-day basis than you do right now. And it seems like the Veteran Services Officer position, it just is a compliment to everything that you've done in life to this point.
Absolutely.
Talk about this position a little bit and what people need to know about it.
Okay, so I'm Jason Gulley. I'm a VSO with the Tennessee Department of Veteran Services, and I'm located with the Charlie Daniels Center. They're a strategic partner of the Tennessee Department of Veteran Services.
On campus.
We're located at the KUC, and I'm in room 202. It's given my life a lot of meaning. You could imagine veterans call me every day. Oh, Mr. Gulley, thank you. I've been awarded 100%. You've changed our family's life forever. Thank you for the invaluable information that you provided us. And, all the way from VA home loan, all the way to the cemetery and everything in between. And so, it's given my life a lot of meaning, Shannon. It really has. It's anchored me down. It's got me involved with people that are very, very thankful for what you do for them, and all kinds of different veterans for different eras. And, it's super cool.
Yeah, it's very rewarding work.
Very rewarding, yeah.
Okay, so veterans, I'm a veteran, you're a veteran, you work with veterans. I'm always reminded on a daily basis how the gap between what's available for veterans and what veterans often know about or feel like they have access to, it's a big gap. That's where Jason Gulley comes in.
That's where Jason Gulley
You need to come in and say, hey, this is what I did in service. This is the time I was in service. This is my life situation. where can I connect with VA? Is that not what they need to do?
100%. Yeah.
Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it.
Just make
Come
an
see me.
appointment.
Make an appointment.
Because you know things that they don't even know to ask.
Exactly.
And I was in admin when I was in the service, went in and got processed out, and still over many years have learned how little I knew about what was available. So they just make an appointment.
They make appointment, yes. Contact me at 615-906-3627. Send me a text. Say, Jason, I'd like to get an hour on your calendar. And, you know, you can come in like you did, and we'll sit, and we'll have a consultation. We'll lay it out. But, yeah, there's a lot of veterans that, you know, they feel they don't want to take from other veterans is kind of one generalization. And also they feel they're not really sure that their disability today correlates with an in-service event. And the way the VA looks at it, and definitely their CMP examiners that they hire, they want it to be they use wording like that it's least likely, there's 50% least likely as not that it happened in service. Does that make any sense? I say that right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a tongue twister, but they want to make sure that it's at least 50% chance. So it could be MOS related. So if you were around heavy machinery that was very loud, so there's a high probability that that was a correlating factor. Or say, for example, you know, you have some kind of back issues and it's more of an acute thing that flares up 8 times a month, but you don't know if it's really relevant. We can sit down and we can look at your MOS and we can military occupational specialty and see if that could be relevant to file. But, you know, things like that, I help them tease out.
So what I'm understanding is if you're a veteran in Middle Tennessee, you need to call Jason Gulley at the VSO office, make an appointment, come in and sit down and talk with you.
ASAP. Yeah, ASAP. We'll go over everything from start to
finish. What if you're a dependent, or what if you have a spouse that served and maybe they're reluctant or they don't understand, or can a spouse initiate the first appointment and reach out to your office? I know you probably got to deal with the veteran directly, but can a spouse or a loved one reach out to your office?
Yes.
Because, you know, there may be a veteran that's dealing with different things that are going on that they're just not able to really take care of their own stuff at that time. I mean, I'm sure loved ones.
I work with a lot of dependents. I was working with some today before I came here.
Okay.
One of the examples, a lot of our elderly, I'm noticing, are not filing for aid and attendance. You know, veterans will get very focused on one shelf, which is 0 to 100%, and 100% permit total is completing that shelf. Okay, there's a whole another shelf called SMCs, special monthly compensations, and one of those SMCs, SMCL, and that's like the first threshold of what's called aid and attendance. That's a monetary monthly amount that the VA pays on top of the service-connected disability to the veteran and significant others that's taking care of the veteran, if that's the example.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of times where people have put a lot of thought and care into programs for veterans, and you just need to call, make an appointment and find out.
Make an appointment, yeah.
Now, so we can't talk about benefits for veterans without talking about one of the best benefits for a veteran, which is the VA home loan. So as an experienced realtor, there's a deep dive that you can do on VA home loans, because most veterans can use their VA home loan one way or another. Is that not correct? You just have to dig a little bit sometimes, but the VA home loan's a huge benefit, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a huge deal. 100% financing. As you know, Shannon, being a mortgage professional, that the rate it's a good, it's, you know, the better rate normally.
Yeah.
And yeah, the VA home loan is there for you know, service.
How does somebody reach you if they want to talk to you about a VA home loan specifically?
VA home loan, okay, 615-926. I'm getting my business numbers mixed up. Let's see, hold on. I'm remembering my VA number. Let's see, 920-2658. That's my real estate number. And yeah, any kind of VA home loan questions, you know, there's so many little things that you could work in, you know, with that. But the VA loan is a great tool.
Just call and make the appointment.
Call and make the appointment. We'll make it easy. Yeah.
Jason, thanks for the work you do, man.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
talk to you soon.
See ya.
Thank you for spending some time with us.